Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast, a show for anyone who wants to be their own boss. If you sit in a cubicle every day and know you are capable of more, then join us. This show will help you build a business and grow your passive income streams in just a few short hours per day. And now your hosts, serial entrepreneurs David Schomer and Ken Wilson.
Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Eric Eden. Eric has over 20 years of experience leading marketing teams for internet service and SaaS companies. His experience includes building great marketing teams, implementing marketing technology solutions effectively, driving demand, and driving growth. Eric's greatest gifts are strategic vision and the ability to implement dynamic marketing and branding strategies. Eric has a track record of managing large-scale projects and creating strategic plans that enable customer acquisition, sales growth, and overall business development. We're really excited to have Eric on the show today. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here on the number one podcast in the world, Firing the Man.
That's right. So to set the table for conversation, can you give our listeners a little bit of background of your path in the business world?
Yeah, if my daughters were here, they would tell you that I'm very old, older than the internet, older than Google. And it's been a great journey in the last 30 years or so, seeing everything evolve across the internet services and tech space and SaaS and mobile apps and AI. And I've been fortunate to have gotten to work for 10 companies full time as a marketing leader, a CMO, driving growth. And I've gotten to do a lot of really amazing things, including 3 companies that, had exits for more than $1 billion each. So I was glad to be part of those really big corporate initiatives, driving things with marketing and e-commerce. But now I have my own startup. And so it's great to be a founder of my own startup and building my 4th billion-dollar company.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, cool. Let's dig right in. So, Eric, can you share a story about the most remarkable marketing you've done?
Yeah, so I'm going to share 3 really quick mini stories because this will really set the context for Firing the Man and why everybody should do it and why it's such a great thing. So my first job right out of college was the original .com domain registry. So back in 1995, I started there. There was less than 100,000 .com domain names registered when I started. And people were like, this whole internet thing, it's a fad. It's gonna level off. And they kept doing this. It's gonna level off. I'm like, guys, I don't think so. I don't really think so. And so in the 3 years I was there, we registered 5 million domain names. And I built the process that automated people applying for the domain names there. And ultimately, Network Solutions went public. It was one of the most successful IPOs of the .com era. And today, there's over 350 million domain names registered. And that's where a lot of the e-commerce happens. So that's mini story number 1. Mini story number 2 is right after there, I went to a company called Vario, which raised $2.5 billion in venture capital. And they were a website hosting an e-commerce company. And they bought 53 companies and rolled them up all into one big super minion, if you will. And essentially, I worked on that, and my task was, this is in 1999, and this is why I'm the e-commerce OG, is they were like, sell 10,000 e-commerce websites to small businesses. And this might have been the hardest thing anyone ever asked me to do back in 1999, because e-commerce then was so hard. But the funniest part about it wasn't the hard thing about the technology of the banking and the payment processing. It was actually, we called people, we were like, your company should have a website. They're like, my company doesn't need a website. Well, my company will never need a website. Why are you even asking? That's dumb. We're like, well, so you can sell things online with a credit card. And they laughed at us and they said, no one's ever going to buy anything on the internet with a credit card. And so that's sort of the framing for my career is that I came from these companies where like it was just starting and no one even believed in it. They thought it was a fad. They thought it was ridiculous. And we did actually sell 10,000 e-commerce websites back around the year 2000. And Vario was public. It got a successful exit for $5.5 billion. And so that really, those two experiences really set the stage for me to keep working for other tech companies over the years. And I largely went into SaaS. So that's a natural progression from, domain names to websites and e-commerce hosting to SaaS, which is a combination of website, application, and e-commerce. And so my biggest success in SaaS was for 10 years, I was the head of marketing at a SaaS company called Cvent, which does event management software online, which basically was if you register for a conference, you can pay for it online. So it was an e-commerce tool for people who wanted to run events. And when I started there, it was very small, like $5 million in annual revenue. And over 10 years, we built it up to $200 million in annual revenue. And we did that by building a sales and marketing machine. And so we were selling annual subscriptions to people running events. And we built up a sales and marketing team of 700 people. And we just did everything you could possibly imagine in marketing to win thousands of customers a year. And the proudest moment there was when we grew it to that level and we got to go public on the New York Stock Exchange. And I got to be with the management team and we went up there and we rang the opening bell as we went public and went on the New York Stock Exchange. So you string together 2,000 days of really hard, unglorious work to get to a great moment like that. And so I've had the privilege to be a part of some really great things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very nice. Very nice. So you've been a part, and I just want to make sure our listeners heard that correctly. Billion with a B, $1 billion exits, correct?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so what are you taking from those $3 billion exits? And as you work on your fourth, can you go into that? And what are some lessons you're taking with you along the way?
So many lessons. I was a part of big teams at each of those companies. I'd like to think that I was an impactful part of those teams leading marketing, because marketing is a true driver of growth at all of those companies and most successful companies. So I'd like to think I was like a key part of the team, but it was a team effort with a lot of people. I was part of the leadership team and the senior management team, but I wasn't the founder or the owner. So I think the point of firing the man is I made a lot of other people a lot of money, and I was happy to do that, including the investors, the other founders of those companies, the CEOs, and they all worked hard. They earned it, but they also benefited from a lot of my ideas, my hard work, and that's just the way it goes. So, in doing the fourth thing, one of the biggest things I learned is start something of your own, be one of the founders, have a bigger stake in it, because you can never really live the dream if you're just taking a salary doing it for other people, right?
Yeah. Let's dive into that a little bit. So when you've had a long career working for other people, and when did you decide to fire the man and go after your own venture?
So about a year and a half ago, this is fascinating because I worked with my co-founder 25 years ago at my first job at Network Solutions. And ever since then, we've always sort of been working together in some capacity. Sometimes the companies I was working for, we worked there together. Sometimes I hired him as a contractor to help me with projects. We've always been working together. And so it's really awesome that when I'm going out to do something of my own and be a founder, I get to do it with my best friend that I've worked with for, 25 years. And we are a little bit like an old married couple. Sometimes he'll be like, I'm going to say, and then you're going to say, and then I'm going to say it, you're going to say it, that sort of thing. But it's really fantastic to work with your best friends and people you work with for a long time. And so that was one of the things that I liked best about going out from, the corporate umbrella. The second piece of it that's really interesting is we use the profits from our previous ventures to fund what we're doing now. So we took about $5 million from previous things that we had made money on together, and it put it into our new startup. And so because we're self-funding it, we don't have the pressure of third-party investors, venture capitalists, or private equity who are going to come in and potentially say, do what you're doing a different way, or push out, the founders. That happens for very valid reasons. I've worked my entire career for PE and VC companies, so I've seen that happen. So my learning was find a way to self-fund it, do it yourself, own it. And then, of course, the natural progression of that is we get all the upside, right?
Yeah, I really like that. And that's, you've taken pretty much a career of experiences and then repackaged them up to suit something that you want with a partner that you work really well with, and it's proven. And so, that's I'm excited for you. That sounds, and also, you guys are coming up with the ideas, and then all the upside is on you. You don't have to answer to someone else or try other ideas if you don't want to. Like, you can kind of build your own roadmap. So that's super exciting. I guess one question I've got is, what is a little bit of a strategy, like growing this new venture that you have? What are you guys focusing on for growth? Like, what are you, like, you've got all this wealth of experience on all these other platforms, right? And so what have you guys learned that's going to drive this growth that you're focusing on?
So that's a really interesting question, because I've gotten to work so many companies across all the different channels in marketing. So there's so many different things you can do, from online advertising to email marketing to SEO. There's just so many options, if you will, of things you can do. And ultimately, we'll probably do some of those all over time. But your question was, what do you prioritize and how do you get going? And a lot of it, I think, has to come down to what can we do that is more guerrilla, that is more viral in nature. Because the reality is, advertising today, just going out and acquiring subscribers for our new product via advertising on Google or other online advertising platforms, including like LinkedIn and others, it's just so expensive. It's prohibitively expensive for most businesses these days, and they just keep upping the prices. So you have to think about the game differently, because the game has really changed. You can't just go out there, because I'll give you an example. Over the years, I've been able to acquire a SaaS subscriber for about $2,000 to $3,000 in Google pay-per-click ad spend. And today, doing the same thing, it might cost $7,000 to $10,000 to acquire a subscriber from Google pay-per-click spend. And the reason is that because some of the advertising platforms, like I was running a campaign on Google not too long ago, and some of the keywords are $40 a click. Just like, I know there's inflation, but like $40 a click for a competitive keyword, I'm like, this started at $1 a click, 20 years ago. And it's like, we talk about how food is more expensive at McDonald's these days because of inflation, but like, I mean, $40 a click just breaks my mind. And, LinkedIn and Facebook advertising isn't much better. And so the answer to your question is, we're thinking differently about how to do guerrilla marketing, particularly when it's our own money. We're not just going to go throw money away, because it's hard-earned money that we earn. So we're going to be doing things like we're going to be partnering with trade associations and groups and making offers to their members and paying them some money for co-marketing, instead of just like blasting things out there broadly on Google. So just to give you a flavor, though, that's like one thing. Another thing is, podcasting and YouTube, I think, are two channels for thought leadership that were definitely not really a thing. Let's call it 5 years ago. They were there, but they weren't really scaled. And today, I think a lot of companies are using these sorts of channels to scale and get awareness out there. And so that's a flavor for some of the things that we're going to be doing to win subscribers instead of just like email marketing or online advertising, which was, I think, what a lot of people relied on 5 to 10 years ago.
When you're looking at all of the marketing possibilities, the list is endless, right? What framework are you using to evaluate profitability, or where do I want to spend my time going after?
So marketing is an investment, right? So if I'm investing my own money as a founder, I'm looking at it saying, what is the exact ROI for every tactic and channel that I'm doing? And then I would want to focus in on the ones that have the best return on investment. And that's a pretty difficult thing to track across channels, but we've actually built some tools, to do specifically that, because actually developing the product is like 10% of the cost, whereas acquisition of customers across marketing is more like 90% of the cost. So we're like, we need to get really analytical about this and think like investors. And the answer to your question is think like an investor when you're looking at all these things, because everything directionally works. And the biggest mistake that a lot of marketers make is they're like, okay, if I spend $10,000 on this and I get $10,000 worth of sales from it, then it's good, right? And the answer is no, it's not good, because marketing should be something like, for a growth company, let's call it 20% of revenue. So if you're spending $10,000, you really need to be making something like, $50,000 to $100,000 in revenue. And people get that equation wrong all the time. And it's hard because there's a lot of things that factor into marketing. There's people's time, there's the program spend. Sometimes you have salespeople involved and you have the cost related to that. So people don't really do these investment formulas correctly. And that's what really ultimately torpedoes the growth and the valuation of a lot of companies.
I think one thing that I know I definitely struggle with is, and I'm gonna make a comparison here, Amazon PPC to Facebook. I like Amazon, and also I'm a retired accountant, so I love spreadsheets. I love ROI. I love thinking of things in ROI. I like to look at a spreadsheet and say, we put this much amount of dollars into PPC. Here's what was returned to us. Here's the organic sales. Here's the PPC sales. And I like that. And that's very rankable to me. Now, to contrast that with, say, like Facebook ads, where you're building brand awareness. Some of those customers go to your website and purchase, but some of them don't. And so I would say, how are you evaluating some of those not Amazon PPC type marketing activities?
Yeah, I get the question, because you really have to get fingerprints on the weapon. And to use a CSI example, you have to really know what's working. And it's easier with some channels than others, number one. And number two, there's this issue, because sometimes you have many touches before you win one customer, unfortunately. So maybe they look at your website from SEO, and then they see a Facebook ad, like you said, and then maybe you email them, and then there's multiple touches, and how do you assign the credit? First touch, last touch, spread the credit, even, peanut butter. And so we have different ways of looking at that along those lines to see which marketing programs actually touch customers. But the reality is 100% of sales are influenced by marketing, because people usually go to the website that marketing has created. They usually have multiple touch points of content that you've created, whether it's product marketing materials or thought leadership materials. And so for people to say it was only something that came from sales, is sort of a myth. And then I think the difficulty that you mentioned of, well, what about the channels that are more like branding and awareness? My simple answer to that is I'm prioritizing the channels where I can really track it the best first, because that should probably be 80 to 90% of the mix. And then I'll take a risk of like 10% on branding and awareness. And like PR falls into that category too. Like if you get an article in Forbes or another business publication, how do you know if that drove anything? You may never know, because they just come to your website after reading it, and like there's no way to tie it together unless you have the chance to talk to a customer. So you can do things like ask customers how they heard about you and things like that to get more insights. But broadly, the answer is focus first on what you can track and what you can prove, where you can get fingerprints on the weapon. Put 90% of your effort into that first. And then over time, as you get some success, you can afford to invest a little bit more in the branding and awareness. I think a lot of founders and entrepreneurs get that wrong. They start with the flip of that. They start with 80 or 90% on branding and awareness and like 10, 20% on demand gen. And then the model breaks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And with the Facebook, and I mean, they're single, the media ad buying like can be broken just like that with attribution. We've seen that with Facebook. We've seen it with Google. We've seen it with a lot of things. And so focusing on where you can track the fingerprints on 90% is, that's the core data that you're positive. And then if something is squishy, then just avoid it until you're in a position to where you can take that gamble. I really like that approach. And I think now curious, did you use that approach at previous companies, or is this just when the budget is coming out of your own pocket, or is that an approach that you've used to grow at other companies?
So I did it at previous companies, but it was much harder. The further you go back, the less tools that existed to get fingerprints on the weapon. But having always worked for VC and private equity backed companies, when you're working for the man and the investor in particular in these cases, God bless them. They it's their money. You're playing with their money. So they have a right to ask a lot of questions, right? So it's fair. But I had to actually, for some board meetings that I went to as a CMO, I would have to go in and provide monthly, like 100-page reports of the exact ROI by channel, by region, by product line. And it was sort of like I had to prove every single thing was a good investment. And then they would debate which things were a good investment or not. And it was kind of insane, like the level that investors would go to in previous jobs. And sometimes they would be frustrated that we didn't have this level of visibility you were mentioning. They would pound on the table and say, why are you a bad person for not tracking this? This is really hard, guys. Like, it's really hard. You understand? This isn't just like available. I can't just push a button and get it. So actually having to do it so many times in the past, I actually work with a really big team in India that I've worked with for the last 10 years across companies. And because we've had to solve this problem so many times, we actually created a tool so that we could not have so much brain damage every time we have to do it, called Dig Growth. And it basically does do attribution across channels for B2B companies. So you can see where your subscribers come from, and it lets you look at the data in all these different ways. And we built that just because, and they sell it to other people now too, because there wasn't really a great tool to do that. You could sort of piece it together with some of the MarTech tools like HubSpot and Salesforce. You could kind of do it, but you couldn't really do it to the point that investors were like, oh, this is great. This is all the information I wanted. That never came out of their mouths. So I just think that, we live in a good time because it's the golden age of MarTech. And now, it's getting much easier to get fingerprints on the weapon, and you just have to put some priority on it and giving great analytics, because when it's your money, to answer your question, it means even more than when it's other people's money. It's just like I could be having a lot of fun with this money. Like my partner and I talked about it as we could find this company, like we could travel the world, we could rent yachts, we could be like the Kardashians, or we could start a company and try to make that 5 million into 100 million. And so that's what we did. But, we are thoughtful of like what we could be spending this money on. You put $10,000 in LinkedIn for advertising and it's gone in one day and you got nothing. Like that just makes you bash your head against the wall, right? So when you see things like that, just picking a random example, you don't want to let that happen, right?
Sure. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and like the perspective is like you had been beaten up for decades by VC, and you've been answering to someone else how you're spending their money, and so you're very sharpened up on finding that out, and I think that's probably a skill set that not very many people have at that level. So that's yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Another question for you, and I've been getting hit up on Instagram, Facebook on ads, as we all do, and one of them was the last week. It was having this, there's everywhere you turn around, there's new AI tools, right? And so this question is AI. What's new in 2024? And so one thing that I was hit up with an ad, it was like, hey, let our new software AI tool run your ads. And so my question to you is like, what's changed in marketing in 2024 in the media ad and AI and stuff like that? What's the new thing there?
I think every single thing is changing is the answer to your question, unfortunately. Like every process in business is being reimagined. And the question being asked is this a AI copilot case? Is it a case for an AI workflow, which is like semi-automated, or an AI agent, which is you can get to almost complete automation without a human review? I think we're still very early in the AI game. I've tried like 50 different AI tools this year. And I think most of them are not quite there yet, but I think a lot of them will be there in like 6 to 12 months. So people keep saying AI is going to take our jobs. I'm like, it's not the AI that's going to take your job. It's people who know how to do AI are going to take your job if you don't embrace it. And so I think that's why I've been out there. I'm trying, 50 different tools for different things. And it is a huge productivity booster. Marketing projects that used to take me 2 weeks take me 1 day. For my podcasts, I produce, all the podcasts myself. I do all the work. What would take 10 hours total manual time without these tools to do one episode, I can produce an episode from start to finish in like 2 hours using all the AI tools. So it is like a force multiplier of 3, 4, 5 times more efficient. I see that across a lot of things I do. And you still have to be a responsible human, and it's not automating things yet. So we're not there, but it does make things a lot better. And you have to have really advanced strategies to use these tools to get high quality outputs. You don't just type something in and it gives you back a great result first. Really what you have to do is you have to put something in, refine it 5 times, and then you get a really good result. You're like, wow, that's really good. But if you just refine things manually yourself 5 times, you'd also get a good result, but it just does it a lot faster. And so that's the analogy I give people is that I think the productivity gains are amazing, and it's going to get better and better and better.
Okay. So talking about like the new AI type marketing activities, and also revisiting kind of our conversation about ranking marketing activities and how do we compare them. What are some of the staples? Like what's the Ford F-150, right, of marketing? Something that's been around for a really long time and just seems to withstand the test of time. And I would say a lot of our listeners are selling physical products. And so if you can work that into your answer, that would be bonus points.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think having a great website is still foundational. And whether or not you use AI to make your website better, I think there's a lot of ways you can do that. Whether you're selling subscriptions or physical products, like you just need to have an amazing website, an amazing landing pages for physical products. I did work for a couple of years for an ad tech company that worked with D2C brands that were spending more than $1 million a month in advertising on different sites. And they were trying to get their conversion rates up from like 1% to 2%. And then I would look at it and they'd be sending a high percentage of their traffic to just their homepage or to one landing page, as an example. So I just give that practical example of you need to have a great website and great buyer journey experiences on the web for people. The more personalized, the better, obviously. And those sorts of things are foundational, as an example. I still think that you need to focus on how do you get people to your website in a cost-effective way. So SEO is evolving. With Google, they change things every day, but it's evolving now perhaps more than ever because they put the AI summaries at the top of Google, and then they put videos at the top of the results, and then they put the organic results under that. So I would say you need to find out, if you're not going big in paid advertising and you want to get organic traffic, okay, how can you get into still the top of the search engine? So maybe that's different motions, like how do you get your company mentioned in the AI summaries? That's a different flavor of new SEO. How do you get into the video search results that Google is purposely putting at the top of the page right now? You need to create videos and you need to optimize those videos, for the keywords. And that wasn't quite as prominent a couple of years ago. Some people are saying very extreme, like it's SEO Armageddon. I'm like, let's not be extreme, okay? But it is very, very different. Like, and I wonder myself, like some of the strategies people say, create 1,000 blog posts and you'll have amazing traffic forever. I'm like, that's not really a thing today. Like, I don't think that long tail sort of works like it did, 5 years ago. And so I think channels are very different. When I say every process in business is changing, you really have to look at things like, using SEO as an example, say, wow, okay, this game has changed. I really need to think about this, right?
Yeah, definitely. How you put that into perspective is that every process in business is changing, and SEO, blog writing, attribution, like pretty much everything. And, the last couple of podcast guests we've had, entrepreneurs, obviously, and they're kind of the flavor that we're getting is like everybody's testing things and everybody's kind of in a pause. They're kind of waiting for whatever is something to bubble up that's really good. And, your analogy of like, hey, it's 80% there, 90, but like maybe in 6 months or 12 months, we'll have, some tools that bubble up and it almost kind of reminds me of, it's a little bit scary too, but it reminds me of the .com, and valuations were through the roof. Like everything was going crazy for a couple of years, and then everything, several of them bubbled up and everything else fell off. And so I think we are likely heading into something similar to that. But finding, if you can find out what's going to bubble up to the top before anybody else does, would be helpful.
So just one thing that's just really helpful for people. I think my suggestion for people would be that in the next 6 to 12 months, because we're in this new era of AI, is roll up your sleeves, experiment with it. Don't go big. Don't go all in, because it's not there yet. We're still in the first inning of this game, right? But if you do get in there in the next 6 to 12 months and you're experimenting with all the different tools and you understand what's possible and you're watching it, you'll see as the new winners emerge, because OpenAI may not be the winning player in AI. It may be a company that's going to be founded in the next 6 to 12 months that takes things to the next level. That's what happened in the .com era, right? A lot of the .com companies were the early pioneers, and they died on the plains with arrows in their backs. And other companies that came after the .com boom, were the ultimate beneficiaries of the technology. So it's okay, I think, if people don't go big right now, don't put use all their bullets right now. It's okay to take a couple months, 6, 12 months, whatever it's going to be, and just watch and experiment, and then get really smart about it, so that when the winning thing is there, you're ready to really step on the gas with it, and you're not taking 6, 12 months to start experimenting at that point, right?
Yeah. I think that's excellent advice.
You had mentioned that you've sampled about 50 different AI tools. Any favorites as you've been dipping your toe in the water?
Yeah, so some of my favorites is I love Descript for audio, video editing. It has some awesome AI capabilities built into it. So I think that's a great example of what's going to be possible in the future. And they have a great name for their AI capabilities called Underlord. It can be your AI intern, because they started joking about the fact it's not there yet. They don't call it Overlord. They call it Underlord, because it's just it's not quite there yet. You need to look over everything it does. And so we all kind of want an intern. So that's one example. Another great, one that I really like is I really like things like secta.ai, which is like a headshot generator and there's a number of these, but you take like 30 selfies and then you upload the 30 selfies and it gives you back 200 pictures of you in different settings wearing different outfits that, if you get back 200 pictures, you can definitely pick 20 out of them that are really amazing. And it's you. It's just like, it's the same thing as someone editing it in Photoshop like they did 10 years ago. It's just, helping with like generating outfits that don't have a stain on them, things like that. So I think it's like, there's really great, practical applications, like that. I think that there's a lot of sort of tools for image generation and video generation from text that I think are right there on the bleeding edge, like tools for creating AI avatars that look and sound like a human. I'm like, some of those tools are like really on the bleeding edge at this moment. Like you can sort of tell it's AI and it's sort of creepy and there's some nefarious uses for them. But I think that there'll be good uses for those, because you think how hard it is from a corporate perspective to create good corporate videos. Like I would talk to someone, they're like, it's $10,000 per video. And I'm just like, kill me now. I mean, it's sort of just like, it should not have been that expensive, and stock images should not have been, tens of thousands of dollars a year for companies I've been at. And so I think that some of these tools, like I use Midjourney for generating images, which I think is good, but it's still not quite there yet. You have to really mess with it to get some great results. Like you have to be really great at direction to get really great results. So you can. But I think that there's a lot of tools that wrap ChatGPT in different ways. And because ChatGPT 4.0 is not quite there yet, then all the tools that wrap it are not quite there yet, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Go ahead, David.
All right. Can you discuss with us Workverse and who would benefit from the services you're providing?
Yeah, so Workverse is the new startup, the $1 billion company I'm working on. It's a pretty big swing, and why not? The idea is we want to create a next generation version of LinkedIn, business networking, social media that's next generation. And the idea for it is pretty simple. It's that after 15 years of really bad social media platforms, we deserve something better. And what I mean by really bad social media platforms is platforms that are full of spam, fraud, and bots, largely because it's advertising driven. I mean, it's just horrible. It's horrible to the extent that as I talked to a relatively large sample of people over the last 2 years about this, 30-40% of people it's so bad with those issues that they just give up. They're just like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to be on any of these sites. It's all the way down to like, how it tracks and listens to you to deliver ads. It's like some of those things are just like pure evil, right? And so I think the idea that we have is it's a business networking site where all of the professionals and the companies on it are verified. There's no bots, there's no fraud, and it's not another way for people to spam you. What it is a way for you to build your professional brand, to build your company's brand, and it's a marketplace for talent that isn't really out there in terms of LinkedIn. You can just sort of direct email each other. That's not very interesting because you just get a lot of spam. What is interesting is there a structured way from verified people that you can get opportunities to be like a keynote speaker or a board member or an advisor to a company? You can provide expert advice and get paid for it. There's not a great marketplace for providing those sorts of skills that is widely available across industries. And so we've been building this with a very large team for the last 2 years, and we're launching it in September. So we're just about 45 days away. We're really excited. And it's going to be subscription based, no advertising, everyone's verified, no way for people to just get on there and spam each other. So the fraud and the bots and stuff like that won't be the same issue that it is across all the networks, including like Instagram. I mean, TikTok is basically just your Chinese bot home for Chinese bots. And even on X, you know, a lot of people have just said they turned off comments because every time you post something, you just get barraged with a gazillion bots leaving weird spammy comments on your post. So it's like this world, like I understand why like 40% of people are like, I'm out on this. Like we just need to find a better way to do this. And regulators around the world have been trying to force the social networks to move away from advertising, move to opt-in subscription models, but they're hesitant because they build multi-billion-dollar, big, huge businesses off this. I get it, but the user experience for people like is really terrible. The stat I'll leave you with here is that LinkedIn in the last year said they removed 100 million fake profiles in the last year alone.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
Just trying to wrap your head around the scale of fraud and phishing and abuse, it's enough to make your head explode when you think about stats like that. And I don't think that Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, TikTok, I don't think any of those are any better. I think it's worse probably than LinkedIn. And so, you know, with that in mind, like we've set out to solve that problem. And we think that we don't need to get 1 billion people using it. We'd rather have like 50 million of the right people using it that are all verified, that are real people, right? And that can work with each other in a more structured way. So that's sort of our big swing. We're super excited about it. If anybody is interested in being on the beta group for it and they reach out to me, I'll on LinkedIn, I'll put them on the beta list, and I'd love to have people's feedback.
Outstanding. Yeah. We'll post a link to your LinkedIn as well as to the website in our show notes to all of our listeners that are driving. But boy, is there a need for this. I've always felt like LinkedIn is a restaurant that you go to lunch and you know you don't like the food, but you have to go there. It's the only place on the block. And especially in the workplace, it's, you know, when you're back in the office, if you're on Facebook, your boss looks at you as though you're messing around, not working. If you're on LinkedIn, it's different. It's a different thing. And that one place to go for business people has bad food. So that's outstanding. That's outstanding.
Yeah. I really like that concept. And you know, David's right. Like I'm a big fan of X, but my big fan of X is going down because every time I turn, it's like I can't even do what I want on there because the bots have taken it over. And so, yeah, like in terms of marketing, I'm sure you guys are going to be marketing bot free. Like that'll attract a lot of people that want something there that doesn't exist. Hey, we're bot free. Oh, okay. Well, let me come on over. I'm going to try that out. So, and I like that concept of like fractional hiring and fractional services. That's also, I think there's a gap there. That's really like that concept. Eric, anything else that
I got to add, it's convenient that you're launching in an election year because bots will be a hot topic from now until November.
Yeah.
And so that's great. That's great.
The Russians and the Chinese are going to be spending a ton of money on any platform they can find. So anyway, that's a sidebar. David, anything else? Any other questions you want to ask to Eric before we get into the fire round?
No, this has been a really fun conversation. Let's get into the fire round.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is your favorite book or podcast?
So my favorite podcast is the All In podcast. It's got the 4 billionaires from Silicon Valley. They do an episode once a week. Love that. I also love My First Million, which is really on brand with, this show talking about how people who fire the man get out there and succeed as a founder. So those are 2 of my favorite podcasts.
Good. Excellent. Next one. What are your hobbies?
I like to travel. So I've been to 63 countries around the world. So
Nice.
I love to travel. I love to do photography while I travel, and that's really what my Instagram is all about. Is my travel around the world, and I also have a French bulldog who I'll never shut up about, and she's my other hobby. But I often refer to her as, for my podcast staff, is like she's my chief marketing officer.
Yeah. I have an English bulldog and he's upstairs, and sometimes he is also my marketing officer. So that's awesome. One follow up on the travel. You said 63 countries. That's a lot. What was your favorite one or most unique?
I think the Maldives is probably the most beautiful. I think southern France, Saint Tropez. Once I achieve another $1 billion exit, I could retire there, but it's that expensive. You probably need to hang with the people there.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. What is one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
I don't miss the politics and having to convince 50 other people for every single thing that needs to be done. I mean, that was just exhausting in so many ways.
Okay, awesome. Last one. What do you think sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think a big piece of it is just having the right culture. And part of that is cultural values like being curious, being ambitious, having belief in what you're doing. Those are 3 examples that you would give, because I gave you guys a pretty passionate pitch about what I'm doing with Workforce. If I didn't deeply believe in that, I couldn't wake up every day. I don't have anybody telling me I need to work 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, but I drive myself because I believe in what I'm doing. I believe that it's impactful for people, and I believe it'll be successful. So I think having those right sort of cultural values, for me, it's around curiosity and belief and just being ambitious and making the most out of life. I think that those, for me, are the things. It doesn't have to be those 3 things for everyone else, but have some North Stars that really help you through these couple thousand days of stringing together hard work before you get those glorious moments like ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. David, over to you to close out the show.
Absolutely. Eric, this has been a really fun episode to record. I know our audience is really going to love it. I want to thank you for being a guest on our show. If people are interested in getting in touch with you or getting on the Workverse platform, what would be the best way?
Yeah, they can hit me up on LinkedIn, or they can go to workverse.com and get started there.
Outstanding. And we'll post links to all that in the show notes. Eric, thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Thank you very much.